Hi, and welcome to this new live of the Smode Academy. So today will be a bit particular since we are inviting a guest, not giving a lesson ourselves, but inviting someone we love and which is a really excellent Smoder, Albin ROSA.
Hello, thank you, Francis, a lot. Thank you.
Will be a bit particular since we are. So
Okay.
my bad. Sorry, I just forgot to unmute the
Yeah.
video on my computer. But the good news is I'm on the chat to follow your questions today, and I will forward the questions to Alva. But so this is the first of a new series of live
Yes.
within the Smode Academy, where we are going to invite different guests that represent both sides of Smode. So both the creative and design side and both the technical side from the video encoder. So we start this series within the series with someone very special for Smode, since Albin is the first professional user of Smode, and that dated back to 2005. And we actually know each other since we are 15 years old.
Yeah.
So, and the destiny put us together to push some pixels together. Yeah,
But
what can we tell? A big part of Smode is related to Albin. He gave very early feedback on all the crazy ideas we were developing, and he was the first one to deal with this crazy software we created at the time, and he helped, really helped a lot in order to transform this into a reliable product, the one we know today. And also, yes, Albin, you wanted to
no,
add
no, I
something?
want to say that I'm glad for you to invite me for being the first guest on the Smode Academy, and I hope that will be helpful for a lot of people who are using Smode nowadays.
Yes, I think it will be very interesting, but we will see. And just to finish the short introduction, Albin is also the co-founder of the D-Labs content creation studio, along with Thomas Besson, which is not here today. But Albin is like the artistic director involved in all the main projects of D-Labs, and has a very big experience in manipulating Smode for real-time compositing on the stage. He also, of course, knows the whole production chain, but one of his particular talents is how to composite in real time on an actual stage. And he's really impressive when he does this.
Oh,
And to
thank you.
finish the short introduction, his background is also VJing since we started together in 2004, I believe, doing a VJ crew which was called the Shaders, which is
Yes.
not under here. But we did this, and then Albin took like a big part in the Shaders and made a lot of audio-visual performances, which are very interesting and which are very in advance compared to the time. So I'm done with the intro, and I will let Albin take over.
Okay, well, thank you, Francis, and welcome and hello, everybody. Since I'm a creative guy and I'm doing creative stuff, I'm going to show you a few ways of working today, a few ways of using Smode to create some images. It's always a kitchen, a graphic kitchen, Smode, because you need to improve yourself and to have a lot of practice and to find the best way that is right for you to create images. But you can do a lot of things in Smode. We'll try to show you a few ways of doing graphics. So you have two main stuff I think that's interesting to show you today. The first one is a small introduction about particles, because Smode is a very great tool to do some real-time particles. So I'm going to show you a little bit how to create a kind of sky nebula and create your own particle and to deal a little bit with particles. And the other part of what I'm going to show you is how to work a little bit with EXR or 16 bytes images. rendered by Octane, and how to do fast compositing tricks with that, which is very interesting, because when you're using Octane and compositing in Smode, you can do some very nice graphic with a few images very fast, and which can be helpful in many ways. So the first part will be particles. So I think now you are seeing the screen of the Smode. So I'm gonna create a composition which will lead to some kind of particle cloud, which will have some life inside of it and a lot of small elements. So I'm starting by doing sRGB comp in 16 bytes. So why doing that and not linear is because with that I keep the contrast color of sRGB screen, but I'm dealing with the 16 bytes per pixel resolution, floating point. Is that the way of saying that, Francis?
Yes, exactly. A floating point, so 16 bits floating point. So just to recap on this, but there are different qualities for the pixels. The deeper one, like of a PC computer or any JPEG image, is 8 bits clamped, so not floating, but fixed.
I'm going to show you here, you can see that.
Here, Albin will mostly deal with HDR compose. So HDR is the term we use when it starts to be really high definition, and this starts with 16 bits per pixel in floating point resolution. And then you can even go up to 32 bits per pixel, but this is usually not so relevant for our use cases, since the actual projectors only will deal with 8 bits per pixels at the end, or 10 or 12 for the best displays. But the overall idea is that inside Smode, we can do all the internal computations with a much higher quality, and then lower the quality at the very end, just before reaching the display.
Okay. So thanks, Francis. And now I'm gonna show you how to do how to create your own particle in Smode. So I'm gonna change the background to the black background, and it's a little bit of compositing just to remind you. So I'm gonna create a composition, which I'm gonna call it art star. The key of that is that as we are going to make a lot of particles, I don't want to have 16 by 9 resolution. I want to be able to have a smaller resolution, which will be squared. So it's very important, for example, to have to create the resolution that you desire. For example, 256 by 256. I think it's a very good resolution to create a particle. There is a lot of way of creating that. The ways that I'm going to show you is using noise and a little bit of mask and a little bit of blur. So I'm going to check.
Maybe just to precise what you are doing, so you are actually building the sprite sheet for the particles you are going to use later. Is that correct?
Yes,
Albin?
exactly. Yeah, I'm going to create a small star in Smode. So square particle, Perlin noise, and I think I found that it's more interesting to change the noise type from Perlin to Sheffield TAC, which is a little bit different. And we're going to change the scale in the horizontal by 8% and vertical by, let's say, 200%. So now I have some kind of, if I zoom a little bit, some kind of curtain in that, and I'm going to change the color to, let's say, this. Okay, it's a bit more saturation on the blue. And as we are going to do a star, we're going to do a small modifier, which is polar coordinates, which makes your image circle, and then we're going to mask it doing a mask. Circle mask, don't forget, because it keeps the ratio of your main composition. So as we are 16 by 9, change the scale by 100 by 100. So now we have kind of disk. And we change the feather to do something like, let's say, yeah, this 228, which is enough, I think. And to have more life inside of this, a small white comp. You can take the mask that you did with control and drag and drop to go back to use it again on the second composition, and slightly up. You see, I'm working to have a small star, like that. And I'm going to lower it a bit because you will see that I'm going to use another trick after that. So now we have one particle, which is here, which is a noise with a polar coordinates. This does everything. And after that, I'm going to do a small exposure trick. So I'm going to use an exposure here and burn a little bit the image to have something quite shiny in the middle, and use again the circular mask to have
yeah. Maybe I need to try something, which is that the layer called part star is actually a pre-comp. So I'm not sure we did a lot of them so far. But
okay.
basically, part star behaves like a subcompo within the main compo.
Okay. Sorry for my bad. I didn't follow all the live. Up. So now you see we have that kind of small star. So let's say it's good enough for us. If you want to get rid of the squares around your comps and everything, which called the helpers, easily get rid of the helpers. So this is the first step. We are just created a small star. So now we are going to create a particle cloud, a fixed particle cloud, not a living particle cloud. So you go in 3D layers and check random points, which will create a cloud of particles. And the other step, which is quite important when you start to deal with 3D and particles, is to create a camera. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change a little bit the first term to have a smaller field of view. So something like 25, which will push everybody closer. And then I'm going to take back the eye of my camera to 6.5, for example. And maybe I'm going to, when I click on the random points, we'll have time to see all the options here. But these are the option of position and scale of the particles and orientation of the particles and way it's interpolating different particles. But also, as it's a sphere created, you have the center and the radius of your sphere. So you can see if I move that, oh, I have smaller particles. So I'm going to do something like, let's say, 2.5. Now I'm looking at a ball of particles, which is quite the beginning of this. Next step, I'm going to replace the dot white, which is a single dot inside of this, with my particle star. So before doing that, instead of dropping the comp directly on the directly on the particle system, I'm gonna share it. I think you did the share before, Francis, just to be sure.
No, unfortunately, we did not yet do it, but I can briefly introduce it. So when you share a compo, it becomes something visible in different places of your tree. So it's once it is shared, anywhere inside the tree, you can refer to these shared elements. That's why it's called shared. And typically, as soon as you want to display like a pre-comp in two different positions in the tree, this is the tool of choice. It is to share the compo.
Yeah, you can do that with anything like a comp, a video, an image. It's very useful. So because like that, this is a reference, so I can control and drag and drop and drag and drop and drag and drop.
We will do another lesson on advanced compositing tools. So don't bother if you don't understand completely the shared for now. What we maybe can show is as a reminder, is that with the F1 shortcuts, we can access to the documentation. And I think if you press F1 on the shared elements, you will have the doc topic displayed.
I'm not using F1. Does it work? Does it work? Do you want me to do that, Francis? Ah, yes, thank you.
Yeah, Alba is actually using Smode since too long for using F1, but that's what
Too long
applies
to
to
read.
a user.
Yeah, a nice help, which is very well made and full of very clever informations. So, yeah, did I have the mouse back? Yeah, it's okay. No, I'm gonna keep this. Save Smode files. Let's call this like star particles. Okay with that. So now we just shared our comp and what we are going to do, because for now our particle system is with a dot white. We're going to drag and drop this element here and suppress this one. So now, as you can see, all the particles are what we did just before, a lot of small stars. And particle system, this is a very simple particle system. This is just a ball of fixed particles. What I'm going to show you now is how to deal with the scale, random opacity, and how to make them move a little bit, which will lead to something I hope interesting. So one of the first interesting thing is like in 3D particles, like in objects, you can apply modifiers and mask on these modifiers, as you can do in with 2D layers. For example, if you're just doing something like dots here and color RGB on the dots, maybe up here this. And if I make a right click on this and I do noise mask, for example, you can see that I'm using a 2D noise mask to apply a black modifier on an image. I'm going to do exactly the same here. Yep. You can see it's in yellow, the 3D modifiers in Smode. So if you're using point scale, this is a modifier like the RGB, which will give you the possibility to change on the fly the size of your particles. So if you go to 0, you don't see anybody, and if you go to full, it will be full white, of course. But for now, I'm going to go to 0. So now all the particles are very, very small. And I'm going to use a mask. And you can use a 2D mask, which will project a 2D noise, 2D noise on your particles. But what is interesting when you are doing 3D is to use 3D masks. And so I'm going to use now a 3D mask. So you see, if I use and not use, you can start to see how it works. You can start to see that there is some kind of noise on that. And there is a lot of options which are very, very cool, thanks, Francis, on the 3D noise. And for example, is the contrast of your noise. So now you can see that you go very contrasted, and you can lower the brightness or upper the brightness. So now there is a 3D noise mask on the particle ball that we have, and we're gonna add a few more.
So maybe I can reformulate what's happening here. So if you remember about the first lesson on 2D compositing, the basic structure of 2D layers were first a generator that generates some image, then a chain of modifiers that have masks that modulate the modifier, and that produces a given image, which is then sent into renderers. And 3D layers, and in particular this one, they behave exactly the same in the sense that they have a generator, a chain of modifiers, and then renderers. The main difference is that it's no longer textures that go into the pipes, but geometries. So the generator is generating this random point geometry. Then the modifiers change some parameters of the generated geometry, and the renderers, they render the resulting geometry. And the masks, in 2D, there were 2D masks. Now, since we deal with geometries, technically there are geometry masks, meaning something you can evaluate anywhere outside the geometry in the 3D space. So it's a generalized concept of masks, but it's exactly the same principle as for 2D layers.
Okay, exactly. I couldn't have said better, Francis. So now what we have a particle cloud with a mask on it. So we're gonna change the blending mode of our particles, which is on the main screen. Now they are in normal mode, but we're gonna put them in additive mode, so you can see that starts to have some additive effects. And we're gonna smaller, change the scale to 5, no, 0.05, like that. And now, if I click on the noise, I can change the octaves, something like 3 maybe, and touch a little bit more. And we start to have a random stuff of noise. And the next step to make some life inside of this is to push the play standalone on the noise. So now the noise will move in time. So in the time he will apply modifications that will bring the particles to 0. So you can see now you have the base to create a small night sky, which can be useful in some parts, and contrast is very high, maybe 50, which is enough. So this is the first one of the first step that you can do. Another step is to deal with the position. What I'm going to use now, it's position noise. It's a modifier which adds some noise in the 3 axes of each of the particles with the noise. So now, everybody moves. If you can see, if you push the contrast of this, you can see how particles are moving a little bit. So I'm going to keep like 50%, no, contrast 0%. And if I play standalone, all your particles will move like that. So I'm applying a 3D modifier. I'm going to move a little bit the first time of my camera for you to be able to see what's happening now. I can slower. So this is one way of making particles move. And you have 3 axes. You can see here strengths. If you unlink the strengths, you can modify them in only one axis, which will make go up and down and up and down. And if you apply also the last modifier, you have some small particles that's going up and down. Up, and maybe making this faster. And next, one of the next step, maybe if it's okay, Francis, I can go further, or do you need?
I think it's very nice for now, and I'm wondering what the next step will be.
A little bit of rotation, because as you can see, all the particles are on the same axis for now. So we're going to put some random on all the particles using not noise mask, but a random mask, which is attribute. It's point rotate. So this, for now, I'm going to do that more easily, like
I remember you that you can use the spacebar to enable, disable any element in the tree. So long-term users do it without remembering that they are doing it, but it's a very good reflex to have when using Smode.
Exactly, Francis. Exactly. So now, as you can see, all the particles are on the same direction, which is not very interesting to make random particle stuff. So position noise point rotate. If you rotate this, you can see it rotates in axis, the other axis, and the third axis, which is for us interesting. I recommend to put like 1 here, so it means that it's 360 degrees of rotation, but everybody's are rotated the same way. So what you can do now is to create a random mask, which will randomly apply or not the rotation. So now it's more random. I put the particles bigger for you to be able to see. So let's go back to 0.5. Yes, more. Yeah. Let's say 0.70.
For each particle, the random mask is actually returning a random value between a fully selected and fully unselected. So what will happen is that the modifier will be interpolated between fully applied and not applied at all. And the degree of interpolation will be different for every particle. That's the meaning of the random mask.
And so now, as you can see, you have particles that are moving up and down along the y-axis a little bit in random with a random scale and a random moving scale and a random rotation on this. So using that, you can do a lot of stuff. See here, you are starting to create living shapes with still particles. Which is one way of using particles, of course. And reduce to 0.05. And let's try maybe a last modifier and then move on, which is on the distort, the spherify, which is a very interesting modifier. That's taking all your objects or particles and creating kind of sphere with that. So boom, now you have a kind of planet of particles moving and rotating itself. And if you want, you can apply some crazy masks on this. You can change the radius of your sphere. But if you want some few particles going out and few particles to stay, you can make a Fresnel mask, for example. Let's be crazy. Invert, time to compute, and change the way of it's inverting everything. Sorry. So now you created kind of crazy particle sphere on 0.5 like that. And if you want to manipulate your composition in real time, because Smode is also all about real time, you can expose a percentage of everything that you have in your tree to have one slider on the top of your comp, which is very useful. For example, I like this. I think it's very interesting, but for during the show or during the concert, I want to go from this state to this state easily when I'm performing. And I don't want to open the whole tree to see what's the right parameter. I don't want that. So one way of working is to make a right click on the percentage and to expose as a percentage parameter. So in that way, it will take this value and put it on top of your comp here, like wonderful. So you will have direct access of this parameter here, and you will be able to move it. And for example, to link it to a controller or to put this in a timeline, it's very useful and important to be able to create some parameters. And for example, if I want, I take this, break everything. No, with the control and drag and drop, I'm gonna create a new instance of my shared element. It's a useful shortcut. So, j'ai touché le bord de l'écran. So now I'm gonna create, you will see the point in a few I have a big, I have my particle star in big, and if I want, I can first make a small mask on it. Tac, 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 tac. Circle mask being 100 by 100. Make it slow, lower. I am working on the network and I have some issues with my mouse. Normally it don't take that much. And I create a circular mask and inverted it with a little bit of feeder. Enough, a little bit bigger, 40, like that. And if I want, I can expose this also, this parameter. So now here I have the parameters that just plays with the opacity of the aura, of the halo of 2D halo. And if I want, I have this. But you can also, when you click on one parameter here, on this one, for example, I want to manipulate both the opacity and the intensity of the spherical film on this. So I just have to delete this one. And if I want, I can go on the parameter here, right click and connect to the parameter, which is here. So now if I increase the value of this parameter, it will apply the Spherify effector and also make a fade-in of this image, which is my reference here. And I totally forgot to press play on the chassis to bring a little bit of life.
So maybe we can have a look at the full screen result. Beautiful, isn't it? I really love it.
It's very simple tricks and all generative. No images were involved during this. So you can see like in 30 minutes, but if you use to do a lot of Smode, these tricks, you can do that in less than 10 minutes and you go from a random point to a planet, and after you can do a lot of more things inside of it.
I think actually it would take you like 2 minutes maybe, Albin, to do everything we just did.
Yeah. Wow. Because I'm used to do that and I know how to do it, but it's all about practice. Like in music, like in graphics, you need to find your own way. But I think this can be very, very talking to a lot of people if it's a way of talking. And as the clock goes by, I think we can stay here. Francis, what do you?
Yeah, maybe we need to finish with some post-effects, but this is up to you.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Maybe you can add some nice, some blur, for example, blurring everyone. And what can we do with this blur? I don't know if maybe we can have bigger blur, like 50 pixels. And if you do the pixel perfect, it will be a lot, maybe 108. And average here, no.
The blur effect has a quality parameter that will be proportional to the amount of GPU time the blur will take. So the higher the quality, the more time it takes, but the more exact the result is. But you can really find a good compromise depending on the GPU you have. Maybe you can show us, Albin, the profile, the current.
Here, you can see my mouse a bit. It's on the top right. You have the output if you want to have an output screen. You have the on-air to have more power on your computer, and you have the active profiling. And as you can see, the blur is
Because
Everybody,
blurring high resolution images is fundamentally a complex problem. Every pixel has to be the average of many input pixels, and this takes time. But thanks to this quality parameter, this budget parameter, we can really configure the trade-off.
I'm doing just a two times lookup on the image, so it will be 2 images. It takes only 0.5 milliseconds, but if you go to what is deserved, 202, as you can see, 18 milliseconds. So it's always about finding the good balance between the budget you need and the result you have. And
so we have one of the users on the chat is called Giberi018. Told us very impressive, and he thinks he have seen this trick on TV. Maybe you can
yeah, I can confirm. You know, when I'm doing a TV show, and a lot of time I'm creating a lot of, I'd say, scenography, video scenography, and I have a lot of big screens. And when I need sky at night with stars, I'm always doing it in generative, because like that I can go. I can find the right size of the stars, and I can mix a lot of different particles for the stars and have the right movement. And it's very hard. I think every professional will agree with me to find the good way of making a particular system is very hard, because when you go from one screen of your computer and when you translate this to a 20-meter wide screen, it's always too fast or too slow or too big. And using Smode at this point of the creativity path is very, 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 very nice, because you can find the right speed and the right size and color on your screen. So yes, I'm doing this a lot on TV shows, but a lot. And when I don't have nothing and someone asks me, do you have something? I say, no, but I can make some stars. And it can be a planetary. I say, oh, yes, okay. So what can we do more? I think we can we can keep some time to do the next step, Francis. I don't know.
Yes, please proceed.
So I'm going to save this and keep it for later. Next step is to deal, this can be a little bit exotic for some people who are beginners in the image and way of creating images. But nowadays, you know that everybody are using a lot of 3D softwares, especially Cinema 4D. And the main point of this software is that they can create HDR, no, not HDR, but AXR images. AXR images, as Francis says before, is images which have deeper per pixel information. So you can create images that will be responsive to exposure and to manipulation, a lot more than simple RGB and 8-bit. And as a 3D user of Cinema 4D and quite a user of Octane renderer, I think a lot of you can understand what is Octane. I'm using a lot of Octane renders. And in Octane, there is also a blur, post-FX blur, which is made directly in Octane. And when you check the glow in Octane and you create an AXR, you can see here I have small shapes. I remember that all these images and composition will be available for download, if it's right, just after the live, no?
Yes, we will make the material available. It will be on our webpage, smode.fr/academy. And also there will be the replay of the current session, because someone told it's going a bit fast. But of course, we will be able to replay this and take all the time you need to understand perfect what Albin did. So I think we can continue, and the replay will be available, don't worry.
Okay, so let me show you a simple line that I just rendered with Octane and Cinema 4D. It's a line with the glow of Octane, but the glow of Octane is really, really nice made. I'm not paid by Octane, but I'm doing this a lot. And as you can see, the powerness English, of 16 bytes. It's a 16-byte image with a small globe. But as there is a lot of information, if I make a right click on this, I'm going to do color exposure. I'm going to push the exposure of the image, and here are the information that was hidden inside the whole image. So it's very interesting to deal with that, because here's my base render, but base render here.
Maybe I can quickly explain also what's going on here. So your desktop screen usually has 8 bits per pixels, which means that the level of red, green, and blue for a given pixel is between 1 and 256. So it only has 256 different possible values. And you cannot express something that is more bright than the white, the maximum. So like here, all the white we see, it's with a traditional screen and traditional 8-bit, we could only tell this is white. Whereas with the HDR image, we can tell it's this white is more brighter than this one. And this is thanks to the floating point encoding. So floating point means that what we actually encode is the value of the brightness and the location of the comma inside the number. And this makes it very easy to say that one pixel is 10,000 more bright than another pixel. We can have really very high contrast encoded into the image. And then, thanks to the exposure, we reveal the whole scale of precision in all the domains. It can be from very bright to very dark. And at the end, the computer screens only delivers 8 bits per pixel, but it's very interesting to work with the higher precision internally.
Yeah. So thank you. Smaller. And now, as you can see here, I have one octagon with blur. I put an exposure, like maximum exposure 20, like boom, it's burning. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the opacity of the layer slowly, so I will find again the original image on this. So it keeps the white, keeps the higher value, and make disappear all the lower values. This was an example. So let's have a little bit of fun with compositing now, because when you Smode is a very, very nice tool to do some compositing. I made a render with something very simple. It's a box with lines on Octane and Cinema 4D. I'm going to switch to 16 bytes again. I did a big render with a normal light, very natural light here. And for example, let's say I did some few renders with auto illumination and a lot of blur, of glow of my 3D scene. So I have my first images, which is this one. My second one is this one, and I use this one in additive mode. It's gonna light up all the stage, everything, but as you can see, you will find the interest of working with EXR 16 bytes with Octane and Smode, because if I do an exposure, something like 6, you can see I'm burning everything. But very interesting trick is to change a little bit the gamma, like 0.5, like that, so 0.3. I have a very stronger image here, and if I mix both of them, color, black, I can use the color function to kill a little bit the blacks, because I'm gonna add here. So now I'm starting to create some final compositing, just working with exposure and few renders up. So this one here. And what I'm gonna do also is to use like line up, it's another one here. But I'm gonna work a little bit with lightning, just for you to see a little bit what you can do with renders. So let's say that I like this one, I duplicate it, Control D, and then I take the line down, the other render I did here, up, and put both of them in additive mode. And now just working with very basic and neutral images, I start to have something very different from the original render. Another trick is, for example, let's bring some life inside of this, select this one and this one, right-click and create a percentage parameter. So now here I have a percentage parameter that allows me to bring from black 0% to full these two images. I'm gonna change a little bit how they are reacting. So now in this parameter at 0, I have this image at 100%. I'll switch down this one. And if I go to full, I have the other. Let's keep it black in the background. If I want, as they are red, I can add some color labels on this, like a red color label. And now I'm gonna put a red color label here to remind me that the red points are manipulating the red points. So if I want, I can put this on the controller, or I can make loop on this without using a timeline. I don't know if you did the loops already, actions in.
Yes, it was yesterday. We did parameters, loops.
Cool, great.
Parameters, loops, and links.
So a linear loop that go from 0 to 100% and again and again and again. I'm gonna change this from linear ramp to sinus. So it will go for the first one to the second one, for the first one to the second one. And speed it up a little bit, something like 1. So now I have a loop from one to the other, and say that I like this, but I want to manipulate that, for example, in the timeline. Where is the timeline? So I'm going to create a timeline, main timeline here. Let's work in 4 seconds timeline. And I'm going to take my image of the octagon here, drag and drop here. So now my image is on the timeline. If I click on the block, I'm going to make a 1 second length and automatic fade out.
So we will have a dedicated session on timelines. This is planned for next week, I think.
Okay. And now I have one loop, which is changing the graphic behind and bumping octagon on the middle. So if I go on the fourth, very, very strong here, from not that much. As Francis said before at the beginning, we did a lot of vidging and creating fast loops and manipulating few data to create something which is a nice animation. It's one of the strengths of Smode. And for example, if I expose the exposure of the octagon, like that, percentage parameter, up, I have here I go from the first one is -20. I go from 0 to 15, which is enough. And if I plug this here, I can start the song like that. And when, for example, the music intensify, you can bring this here and play with the intensity of this. Boom, 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 boom. And this is the advantage of using HDR images, EXR images, because this here will burn to nice white and will have a lot of more information on the graphics and visual graphics.
So just quickly answering to the question of Chris.
Yeah, go ahead.
Asked if we could animate the octagon without a timeline. And I think the answer is yes, of course. We could.
Yeah, of course, the answer is yes. I'm going to group this, be able to switch this easily. You just have to make a linear loop on this one, for example, linear loop here. It's going to do a fading, so I'm going to reverse that to fade out and change the length of the loop to 1. So now it's doing the same as I did in the timeline, fortunately.
So yes, in general, we tend to do the simple animations with loops, and it's really scenarized or time-coded. We switch to timelines, and usually typical Smode content is a combination of both, like timelines, launching loops, for example, stuff like that.
Exactly, or if you do some rhythmic patterns, for example, I'm gonna do that with the other ones because the other ones are quite cool also. I also did the renders of vertical tubes. On the back, there is 4 vertical tubes to the middle. Take 3. And the other one, 4. And the timeline will be useful for this one. You will see in a few. In the timeline, Francis will make I think a real lesson about that. If I take all my images here and drag and drop them here, make them here, switch off that, go back to the timeline. The blocks will make 1 second length with 1 second fade out. This will be in additive mode. And I'm going from the back up with shift, can snap toward us. And why do I have 4? Okay. Ouais, thanks you. Thank you. So now I did a small timeline, which is going to make fade out, fade out, fade out, fade out from the bottom to us. Tack, tack, tack. I'm going to speed it up like 3 times. They have an animation.
I think we can feel that you are a musician also.
Yeah, it's quite based on like how to create small loops in a software, but it's not that different sometimes from Ableton Live, you know, how to create blocks, few animation blocks, and managing with these blocks from live to. And I like my my graphics here, and I want to put some exposure on the vertical tubes that I just did, but I don't want to make a drag and drop and to parameter every exposure. So I'm going to take everybody here, Control-Shift-C to make a pre-comp, like in After Effects. Go back to the blending mode, additive, and then modifier, color, color exposure, and the exposure is 6. It's more flashy graphic, and burn a little bit more image. And we still have our octagon who is here just once in a while in time.
So there is a question. Do you have any place to recommend where to download free EXR files in order to trying to reproduce this?
Smodeacademy.com.
Okay, we will provide.
Because it's quite hard to find simple graphics made by Cinema 4D and Octane with that kind of blur configuration. But you can find a lot of XR on the web, but most of the time it's HDRI, so big images who are based to create a light.
We mentioned the other way the HDRI Haven website.
Exactly.
And when you take these HDR images, they will indeed be high definition, and you'll be able to test the exposure effect at least on them. And it's good that here the best way is to produce your own images if you use Octane renderer, for example. And we had another question from Roma, which is asking if this is the way you work usually, creating just a few elements in C4D and making the animation in Smode.
I'm using a lot of ways of creating images, a lot different, because each way of you have to adapt the way of how you create your images for the time you have to create the image and the results that you want to have. But for me, it's a very fast and rock and roll way of working. Just did this is based from one graphic I did for a big TV show like 1 month and a half ago when when we still did a lot of before the lockdown. I mean, and actually I prepared something, but I know that it wasn't good because I created some few videos with animation, and I wanted something that were to be more punchy. And this is one of my way of working, because now you see something very rock and roll, but if you start to work with Z depths and normal depths and rough depths, and if you do a lot of renders and a lot of IDs on a 3D third-party program, you can do all your compositing inside Smode. And I didn't show that, but for the one who are a little bit interested in that, I also rendered the Z-depths of my render. So using that, for example, you can create a 3D particle system and have particles only on the front of your image or on the back on your image or hidden by objects. So yes, it's one of my more favorite more interesting way of working, because like that you can go very fast, and if you have a remote, you can bend all your controllers inside your controller, and then you play everything by the hand. It's a very rhythmic way of working, and it's endless possibilities and a lot of fun.
We have another question quickly from Chris, which asks, how is the reflection of the octagon on the sailing imported in Smode? And maybe you need to reshow simply the source images.
Yeah,
make this point clear.
Yeah, because it's rendered by the 3D software. So here,
yeah,
this is the
really
image.
And the thing is, as we are working with the linear workflow, we can directly addition the images using the additive blending mode. And each image corresponds to the contribution of one particular source of light, basically.
Exactly. Exactly. So this is one way. Maybe if I have a few minutes more, I can show you
all the time you want, Albin. I think people love it. We have a lot of people really impressed by the look we reach so easily.
So now we can we're gonna switch back to particles a little bit, so like that it will go back to your mind. And we're gonna use the line object. Forget to save.
So Albin is saving for you, because all the things he saves will be made available in the exact state that
we start with activation. Okay. Yeah. Basement. Flash. No, this one is not interesting. This one, we just saw it. This is an image. And so this is the line that we have. I'm going to put some black on the back. I'm going to make a small mask on this image. I'm going to make a plasma mask on this one, and crop a little bit, because when I did the renders, there is some cropping of the glow around the image, so it's not very very interesting. So now I have my line here. I will use first thing first. I'm gonna share this, because I'm gonna use this a few times. Working in 3D, always put a camera in front of you, and let's discover another point generator, particle generator, which is the grid point. The grid point is a grid of points. It's and the name. You can rotate it a little bit if you want. So you can see it's a very, very, very interesting tool. It's like a potato in the food. I'm going to change the precision to have just one kind of array of dots, and maybe I'm going to put only 3 here, and change the scale of this, and link the parameters and use that. And as maybe few of you can start to imagine, I'm going to take my line here, put this here, and delete. So now I have my referenced EXR on each point of the particular system, and deal a little bit with the scale. So let's say it's good enough for us. And if I change a little bit the amount in X, no, a little bit less, I forgot to put my particles in additive mode, which is very important in this, to add more ones. So now I have a grid array with a lot of vertical lines. What I can do, and what is very important for you to keep in mind, is that you can have different sprites on your particle system. So if I do Control D, that now all my particle system is gonna randomly use or this particle. For example, right-click color and RGB here. You can see randomly you have someone with the red and someone with the white. It's a fade between them. If you don't want to have some fade, you can change on the bottom of the grid point system linear nearest. So now you have red or white. Okay. Let's keep it in nearest. It will be easier. But instead of having a red modifier, I'm gonna put an exposure exactly. So I'm gonna burn some few of the images. You can see my mask here is my feather. I know that this isn't that happy. Well, it's good enough. So the exposure is quite hard. 6. And instead of having a random way of choosing between the first and the second one, you can have, like we saw just before, a 3D noise. The interest of the 3D noise is that you can have a play on this. So now it's moving, and if you go back to not the nearest interpolation, but linear interpolation, you can see that moving a little bit, but not that much. But if I push the contrast of the noise, up some kind of paragraph of this, and if I change the scale of the noise, I start to have something more interesting. Just look at my notes. Because I forgot to put some gamma modification on this. Right. Say that we need more like 36. So you just created some kind of lines modification with using the XR exposure. And if I want to be to bring you something more also interesting, this kind of noise are interesting, but if I want, for example, a modification that will a modificator that will scale down the sprites with the noise and scale up, scale on and scale up the sprites, I can go to point scale, something that you saw just before with the stars. So point scale is moving like that. But I want the same noise, because when it's when the noise is black, it's small and thin, and when it's white, it's big and with a lot of exposure. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna share the noise. So now this noise is shared here and is available, for example, to So now I have the same noise, which is switching between two particles and manipulating an effector. And the inverse is, so you can start to have a radio-like stuff. This can be very useful in a lot of ways. 3, maybe if I put some 2 here. Start to rotate this. And here, Voilà. I think it was a good example of using a new particle generator to kind of the same image shared with one with an exposure and to share a noise between them.
Thank you, Albin.
Voilà.
Voilà, like we say in French. That's it. It was very beautiful. Thank you a lot for all you brought to us today. If you have questions, it's the last moment to ask them. Just mentioning the comment from Novi Codex, which is that you can use Blender also to export.
Using kind of 3D software. Blender is a very, very good software because it's free. There is a lot of good options inside of that, and there is a very big community, and Cycles is very interesting to use also to make some nice XR graphics for Smode.
So ideally, we should do another session dedicated to camera mapping techniques, I feel. So I will soon ask you again, Albin, and hopefully we will have another session.
With pleasure, the basement is here.
It's excellent. Thank you very much. And what's coming next? Tomorrow we will have another invited guest. And like this time was really on the creative side, and tomorrow will be more on the operational side. And our guest will be Loïc Choquet, which is a video encoder working really oftenly with the labs. And Loïc will explain us how to control Smode with the Grand MA Lightning Desk. So it's happening tomorrow. You will soon have the super image that we prepared for Loïc. And tomorrow you will learn how to use the Grand MA in combination with Smode. So thanks again, Albin. It has been really, really great. And I feel this will stimulate a lot of creativity. So
I hope so. I hope so, because Smode is all about creativity and doing the way you want some nice graphics. Thanks a lot, and don't forget to stay home.
Yes.
And to do some Smode, a lot of Smode.
Yes, also. So see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Ciao.